Hello, friends. Good to see you in the metaverse for the medical device uh, DG Expo Symposium. I am Professor B Ravi from IIT Bombay, and I would like to be sharing with you um, the importance of creating an ecosystem for medical device innovation in the country and what are the success elements for that with an example of an ecosystem at IIT Bombay, which I hope you will both will be interesting and enjoyable to you. So let me share my slides and here we go. Okay, so as briefly introduced, I have been at IIT Bombay for more than 30 years now. I'm a professor of mechanical engineering, but I also have been fortunate to start an initiative called as BETIC, that stands for Biomedical Engineering and Technology Innovation Center. We'll talk about that a little later, but I want to really start with you the importance of medical devices. As you know, India is now has a very big healthcare sector, which includes, of course, hospitals, manufacturing, insurance, even your health tourism, and healthcare has already become the fifth largest, if not the fourth largest already, with about 50 lakh people employed in the sector. The budget for healthcare, both the healthcare budget as well as the R&D in healthcare budget, has been increasing steadily in the government of India, which is now very substantial. And medical devices, which are critical for the healthcare, whether it is diagnosis or treatment, it is now very big in India. It is now close to about 60,000 crores. Unfortunately, almost 80% of that is imported from other countries. Now, that's not bad by itself, but the countries from where we are importing those devices, the healthcare expenditure per capita there is like more than 100 times. So even if we make devices with a lot of discount, it is still not affordable to most of the population here. So that's the basic requirement for indigenous development, manufacturing of innovative medical devices which are suitable for local population. So what is happening is that our own industry is coming up, but it is struggling to compete in terms of either quality for the high risk, high value devices, or in terms of low cost, in terms of low risk devices, right? I mean, like hospital supplies at the right side and maybe CT MRI machines on the left side. Government regulation is good, but it's a struggle in the beginning to meet all those expectations. But if you ask any hospital administrator or doctor what you really want in a device, they're always looking for something which can give better treatment, lesser side effects, more customizable per patient, or for the doctors. Our doctors have a different work profile here in terms of workload. And of course, we want world-class quality, reliability, yet we want to have it affordable to the masses in our country. So with all this, it looks very challenging, indigenous development and innovation. Fortunately, the new technologies which are coming up, whether it is CAD/CAM or 3D printing or artificial intelligence or Internet of Things, medical imaging, image processing, and so on, these give a fantastic opportunity for a young generation to rethink and reinvent these medical devices to meet the expectations of the hospitals and doctors. So what is required is innovation and patient-centric innovation and world-class manufacturing. The point I want to make here is that it is not possible by a single group or a single specialization. You need to get medical, design, manufacturing, quality, management, even public health experts together. And we have to work in a collaborative fashion to deliver high quality, yet reliable and affordable devices. So what is stopping really the academia, all the R&D labs in the country to actually create an impact? So that brings us to this slide, which is values of death. As you know, there is a new problem or you want a new concept. You can always create a proof of concept or proof of principle in an R&D lab. That's the first value of death. It is feasible. It's being done. Not very difficult. But the next step has to be taken, which is that you convert the proof of concept into a prototype, a functional prototype, which you can demonstrate how it's going to work. And even this is happening in the prototyping centers, innovation centers across the country. And output at the end of the first value of death is typically a paper, technical paper. And the output at the second value of death or second stage, you can say, is a patent. But then comes the difficult part. How do you convert the research prototype into a marketable or commercially viable product? Okay. And that is happening now in large numbers in business incubators across the country, where you have these young students or graduates or their faculty mentors creating startup companies. As per last count, there are more than 1 lakh startups in the country, and about 15% of them you can call it as a healthcare or medtech, biotech companies. So it is about 10,000 to 15,000 companies in this startup companies in this sector. But that's not the end point. You need to take the startup and scale it up so it actually enters the market and makes a viable business, continuous scales, growth in sales. And that happens if you have a good business plan, partners, land, equipment, employees, distribution channel, and so on. And that requires a lot of resources. And if you look at the actual output in academia across the country, I'm just putting a number for you to think about. For every 1,000 papers published, maybe you have about 100 patents, and for every 100 patents, maybe 10 startups are coming up. And for every 10 startups, if you can even have one scale up, which becomes a big business in India, if not globally, that will be a fantastic achievement for us. Interestingly, the amount of money that we require, the funding, goes up roughly 5 to 10 times as you go from the left side to right side. So if you multiply the amount of money required by the number of papers or patents filed, actually the amount of funding for each stage is actually roughly the same. The question or the point that we think about is that can we increase the funding in the, let us say, third or second stages, so to create more of the scale-ups? But that's a major issue. The third value of death, which is converting research prototypes into commercially viable products, is a game that very few people have learned how to do that. It requires a lot of support from academia and government and industry and society as well. And that's what we want to talk about. As an example, what has happened here in the BETIC I mentioned earlier, Biomedical Engineering and Technology Innovation Center. It's a humble shed in IIT Bombay, Powai campus. But this team of people in this lab, they look at themselves not as researchers or innovators or something like that, but they are looking at themselves as a partners for aspiring medtech innovators. Innovators are like running a marathon, right? And you need to supply them, water and glucose and biscuits and oxygen and cheering them all the way, right? So that is what is you need that kind of a supporting ecosystem for doing that. BETIC is funded very nicely by the state government of Maharashtra, the S&T Commission, as well as central government agencies, as well as industry CSR like NSC Foundation and so on. So that is helping us to create the ecosystem. If you step inside, these are traditional, you need prototyping in terms of plastics, electronics, metal prototyping, basic pilot manufacturing, some kind of a way to validate your designs. So for example, the GATE lab in a neighboring hospital helps us to look at some of the assistive devices evaluation and so on. And also you need a process in place which starts from hospitals and doctors. You need to talk to them. You need to spend time in hospitals to understand the problem firsthand. Of course, you have to take permissions and you have to be making sure it is confidentiality, privacy is maintained and so on. But that's where the starting point is. The doctors will help you to define a problem and maybe even generate an initial idea of how to solve that. So in this case, you're seeing an example of a rural hospital doctor saying that when patients come to them and they hear a sound of a heart or a chest which they have not heard before, they would want to send the sound of the patient for a second opinion, not the patient himself or herself. And that's how the problem was defined. And the idea came up for a digital stethoscope, which can be used for remote telemedicine as well. And then one of the team members left their job, got into this innovation full time, created the prototype of that. Then they got an award from the government to start a company and create a professional workable prototype and product, batch run a product, and you're tested in various hospitals. And finally, of course, you take it into various hospitals and rural camps and so on to prove that it works. And then, of course, now is large scale manufacturing and supply and so on, and impact. So from POC to prototype to product to practice, It's a long journey, but we need to have systematic path of doing the whole thing, which we have been evolving at BITIC for the last few years. The next thing that you have to do is to also create, let me also mention that you need to be prepared for failures along the way. So for example, we have like this, we have about 240 different ideas for different products. We didn't take all of them forward. We took them forward only when we saw some traction and then some value addition and so on. So only 60 went forward, and then we have filed about 60 patents. But after that, did everything went into licensing? No, only about half of them got licensed to either startups or companies. And out of that, 10 have now reached the market or clinical trials. Hopefully, many more will reach. The point again here is that it is in the beginning, killing an idea is very inexpensive. It doesn't cost anything. But killing a project at the third or fourth stage is very expensive because you already invested a lot of effort and money and resources into that. So you have to be very careful about of killing more ideas in the beginning so that later on you take only the good ones forward. Okay. How do you do that? You have to again figure out your own ways of criteria for that. I'll share some of the criteria at the end of this presentation. So the ratios are like that. Now you also need a pipeline so that you can create a continuous chain of products one after another. At BITIC, we start from something called as a Medha, which is a hackathon, because there are many youngsters who say that we want to enter this field, and many doctors say that, can you solve this problem for us? So we bring both these things together, the clinical problems from doctors and then those interested in medtech. We bring them together in a hackathon called Medha. I'll show you pictures of that in the next slide. And then those who are very proved to be good ideas and people both, we bring them to a more intensive camp called as MEDIC. And again, out of that, those who are interested to follow this full time, we provide them a fellowship for 1.5 years. By end of that, they file a patent, and then they exhibit their product in an exhibition where they get connected with other doctors and maybe partners and investors and even patients who ask, when can I have this product? When can I use that? So that gives you a lot of confidence and emotional support to say that, okay, this is a time to go forward. And then you start a company. And the target is that you should have sales revenue in year one, at worst in year two, not keep on developing after starting up for a long time. And then, of course, you're going to start up and scale up and so on. So it is possible to go from definition of a problem at the bedside in a hospital to innovation at engineering bench, to business, a startup on a scale up, to supplying it back to bedside in hospitals. This can be done within 2 years for a low risk device like a diagnosis or a screening or a treatment device. So I promised you to share some pictures. So these are our hackathons in many places, different parts, mostly in Maharashtra, Pune, Kolhapur, Wardha, Nagpur, you will see these places. And every hackathon, we make teams of 4 people. You'll have one doctor, one mechanical engineering background, one electronics, and one maybe business background or industrial background. It's a very cohesive, beautiful team of 4 people. They don't know each other in the beginning. In fact, they don't know the team members, they don't know the problem, they don't know how they're going to solve. But still, at the end of the hackathon, there is magic. And the front row, you will see some of the doctors who are jury members. And it's such a happy event to see how much can be done in just 1 week hackathon like this. And then those who prove themselves and they are committed to more long-term or intensive training, we bring them to this course called MEDIC. This used to happen earlier over 1 week, but now we have stretched it to 1 month over weekends. And the last one you can see, we did it in October this year. You can see the participants, and then you can see the jury members as well. It was a hybrid mode. We did the initial 4 weeks in virtual mode, and the finale in physical mode at IIT Bombay. Next year, hopefully, we'll go back to complete physical mode and again compress it back to 1 week or so. Now, after they finish the training and they say, and those who say we want to do it full time, remember many of the participants, in fact, most of the participants are working professionals. They are either doctors or engineers or industry, and many of them say that we want to do it full time, and they resign from their jobs. Or in case of fresh graduates, they do not take up a new offer of a job and say, we will do this instead. So those fellows, we bring it to our lab and we connect them to local top clinicians. And in every picture, you see an engineer, a doctor, and in some you will see a patient as well. And these are different teams working on different problems, head to toe. I'll show you pictures of that as well. And remember, I mentioned that after about a year of development, and once the prototype is ready, we request them to file a patent, and then you show it in the exhibition like this. Some of them are organized by us, some of them are like IISF, which you see, India Innovation Science Fair. These are organized by Government of India. And we also use this to launch new products. You also see Honorable Prime Minister looking at some of our products. So these are very beautiful events to connect a lot of stakeholders together. And innovators get that final conviction that, yes, this product is good, I must take it all the way to public. And that conviction happens in this exhibition. So as a result of that, you can see today we have about 16 startup companies. You can see they're literally head to toe, from a glaucoma screener and let's say smart stethoscope, which I mentioned earlier, to all the way to assistive devices, which you can see like a leg prosthesis or a knee, ankle, foot prosthesis. All these are developed within about 2 to 3 years. The red phrases are the company names, the startup companies. Almost all the startup companies are incubated by the innovators themselves. Okay, and they have won fantastic prizes, almost 1 crore or 10 million rupees of funding on average. Some of them, of course, are raised far more than that. And many of these products are already in the market, like I mentioned, stethoscope, diabetic foot screener, the prosthesis, and your bone scaffolds and so on. And this year we hope to cross more than 10,000 total cumulative sales of all the devices. And an estimate is that we have touched about 500,000 people already with this. Now, thanks to this, we also are getting a lot of small and medium Indian companies who are saying that, why can't you be our R&D partner? We know the market, we know exactly what the customers need, and we can take it back to market. But R&D part, we're not able to do. Can you do it for us? So now we have many projects. I'm showing just a few samples. We have many more projects from industry. And these are just developed in-house, and we pass on the technology, including the drawings and process and testing results and everything, back to the industry partners. This is becoming, again, a very nice part of our portfolio now. It's also important to share what you're doing with the public. If not anything else, the inventors, innovators, the startup entrepreneurs, they feel good about it. They feel inspired, and you are inspiring other people in the whole process and the importance of that. And even more important, there is a kind of, you're developing a market for the products of the startup companies. So this has been very helpful. Now we have very good friends in the media, and you need to keep the relationships going with them as well. This is our beautiful team at IIT Bombay. I must mention that there are mechanical engineers, electronic engineers, software engineers, design engineers, materials, manufacturing experts, quality management, and other disciplines. And these are all kinds of colors. And you need that kind of a background. Okay. And I mentioned many of them actually have left well-paying jobs or did not take up good jobs and said, this is a mission for us and we want to do this. And thanks to them, that the whole success which you see is thanks to the team members. Beyond our own institution, it's also important to build the stakeholder network. Government, which essentially funds and facilitates and also regulates medical devices. We have now good linkages with DBT, BIRAC, the SND Commission of Maharashtra, ICMR, DBT, and so on. And in academia now we have similar BETIC cells in about 7 or 8 engineering colleges and about 7 or 8 medical institutes. So medical institutes help us to identify the problems and test the solutions. Engineering institutes is where the actual development and manufacturing, at least prototyping happens in the beginning. And then we have the industry partners. We have more than 100 partners, not just the startups and industry who are working with us, but also the vendors who help us to do the pilot manufacturing and some testing and so on. So these linkages are important. But beyond these four, you also need to have strong linkages with the incubators, business incubators, the non-governmental organizations which give you the grassroots connection to the, especially the small towns and villages, because that's where the problems and solutions need to be taken. And then you have to have investors of all kinds of levels, and of course, media persons I just mentioned. Very important to be able to share what you're doing, the best practices, and so on. So what are the takeaways and what are the main experience that I would like to share? The key success factors, I think, for us has been that we have been very clear that we want to be sure about that there is significant market for any project that we take forward. In fact, many things which we did not take forward was because we did not find there was sufficient market or market demand, And this cannot be just by word of mouth. You have to actually meet maybe ideally 100 people, maybe 50 doctors, maybe hospital administrators, distributors, even competitors, and so on. Hard evidence you need to gather to define that this project is worth taking forward. Second thing is you need to make sure that what you're doing is at least 5 to 10 times better or faster or less side effects, or not just cheaper or affordable only, but other value addition as well. Because if it's just 10-20% improvement, it is not sustainable. By the time you finish the project, there are already others who have already improved their own products. They're also running, right? Everyone is running a race there. So you need to have a very dramatic value addition in terms of your innovation. Then also you see whether it is feasible to do it or not with the kind of resources we have. If you need a machine which is not in the country or a testing which takes a 1 year time, then the whole thing is derailed. So you need to look at facilities, for creating a minimum viable product to take it into the market. And finally, I cannot emphasize enough the need for a committed full-time team. Okay, at least a core team of 3-4 people, designing, manufacturing, testing. Someone has to have a medical background, and you need to have partners who are committed, saying, okay, I'll give you time, maybe 1 hour every day, or at least half a day every week, and so on. Without that, you cannot just go forward. This is not a part-time job. This is a full-time job for a core team of people. So these I found was the critical success factors for taking an idea all the way to impact. The second thing is quality management system. Initially, we thought that we need to create those standard operating procedures and all that, so that we streamline our own procedures. We thought it will help us to train a new recruit very quickly within a week's time. But later on, we also found that it was very helpful in getting the approvals from hospitals for clinical trials, and also from government agencies saying, okay, device certification or manufacturing license and so on. And more than anything else, customers feel reassured that what we're doing is in a scientific way. Okay, and it's a very rigorous way of ensuring the safety and performance of the devices. So what it means is that basically you have to capture and reuse the best practices in all aspects, all activities of product lifecycle, what I showed you, from defining, developing, delivering, and deploying. And you start from a quality vision. You have to put down writing what exactly you mean by your quality management system. It could be slightly different from each other. ISO 13485 is the international standard for the quality management of medical devices. So you need to have that. And what it means is you create a standard operating procedures, you create forms, empty forms, and then you fill the forms with signature that becomes a record. And then you need to have periodic reviews of your both records in terms of saying, are we following all the practices properly? Are there any issues? How do you fix the issues which already happened? And how do you prevent the issues from happening in the future? Very standard way of doing these things. And if you all do all these things, you can apply to the international agencies and you get an ISO 13485 certificate. So our lab has a certificate, and I can't tell you the value of this certificate in the 4 things which I mentioned above, especially the kind of assurance that it gives to hospitals and government, and of course the final patients and doctors who are users is unbelievable. So this I would strongly recommend as one of the key activities to get into this whole time. The third I would like to share with you is the commercialization models. If you're an R&D lab, okay, you can look at what is your appetite for, let us say, benefit and risk, Of course, higher benefit, higher risk, both kind of go together on the right side bottom, as you can see. And how much you are able to willing to give up the operational control, because if you want to keep high risk, it comes with your high control both together in some sense. So there are, you can, for example, say that I want to have low risk, which also means low benefit, and I don't need any operational control. I'm just going to transfer the entire technology, know how, show how, know why, everything I'll transfer to someone else and let them do whatever they want. That's the easy way out. Okay. Or you can say, no, I have a little skin in the game. I also want to benefit from that. So I'll give a little bit of initial licensing fee plus some royalty. Royalty means that if it does well, then of course I also get some additional revenue. If you have more control, but you don't want any benefit, you want to give it up to society in general, well, you can go for social entrepreneurship. You can make your intellectual property open source, and you can either give it to or fund it by the social corporate responsibilities of the industry or NGOs or social, bodies, or even public at large. There are many ways of doing social entrepreneurship. But the best, of course, in my opinion, is that if you think it is a high value item, you want to reap the benefits and also take the risk of doing that and retain a lot of control, well, nothing like creating a startup company. Keep the IP rights with yourself, you make it, you sell it, and you get funded by shareholders and other stakeholders, investors. Even customers are investors, because when they buy a product, they are giving you money, and that money can go into funding growth or future development. So there are 4 ways. You have to pick the right way of commercializing your product that you have in mind. And finally, the money. The money is oxygen for business. So at the concept stage or POC stage or prototype stage, the amount of funding you require is not very high. You can raise it, but as it goes into the scale up stage, you actually put a minimum viable product in the market, initial, and then you grow the market, and then finally you go expand territories from regional to national to maybe global. Well, you need lots of money. Okay. Now, initially, you can get the money from, maybe if you're an institute, you can get from your own lab, some project, or government grants, or some competition awards. Government also gives a bit of public-private, awards, like BIRAC, for example, put some kind of money, 50 lakh, 1 CR, 2 CR is kind of possible. But beyond that, you have to look into private funding. Now, private funding includes your own personal funds, your saving, family, friends. Angel investors are like government awards. They take very small equity, they really wish you well, and they want to exit when the bigger investors like venture capital or private equity come into that. Or you can always have option of selling your entire thing to a larger company or merging with that and so on. So these are various ways of doing that. Again, back to the same thing. As you go from the left side to right side, you get more oversight from other people and you get less operational control. But that's a decision that you take, that you want to scale up faster, then you need more investments. If you are okay to grow slowly with good control, well, you can always bootstrap, as I say. It's your call finally. So let me conclude by saying that medical devices are important for the country, affordable, reliable, high quality, suitable for the local population and so on. And that requires indigenous development and manufacturing. And that needs an ecosystem where researchers go beyond patents. They go into and get into product development, the manufacturing process development, and what I would like to say, even people development, or the team development, or the culture development, and so on. So without that, it won't sustain for a long time. And definitely, obviously, it means that you need people who are capable, who are committed, who can solve problems, creative, and of course, who can collaborate with different kinds of people, medical, engineering, management, industry, investors, and so on. And I like to say that those researchers who are in the room, faculty, and of course, institution heads, we need to be able to connect our research with our education to innovation entrepreneurship. I call it as reinvent. And it is a golden spiral. We need to see how research flows into what we teach and what students we guide. And can we get something out of that in terms of a patent and also license that to a startup by the same students or alumni and other people. So these will help in creating a very strong ecosystem. So that's it. A couple of books. Essence of Medical Device Innovation is a book we wrote to capture the stories of the innovators from our lab. And the best practices about BETIC are captured in some of the other publications. You can look at the betic.org website. You want to connect with me, you can look me up on LinkedIn. But I hope that whatever you are trying to do to contribute to medical devices, innovation or ecosystem, I really wish you great luck because it's a very important thing for the country. I think what India does will be looked up with great respect and great expectations from many other countries, especially Eastern Africa, Southeast Asia. They're looking up to India to guide the way. I think what we do with a combination of high quality and affordability will benefit, of course, even people in the rest of the world as well. So I hope it's something interesting, something useful for all of you. And thank you very much. Good day to you.